Telephone, the founder and chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition and the author of the new book, Awakening, Ralph Reed. Ralph, it is great to have you on America's Forum.
Thank you very much, JD. Good to be with you.
Now, Ralph, we have a debate in the newsroom from time to time, and we had it before you joined us here. The debate about economic conservatives and social conservatives, values voters. How do you reconcile the two, or are those differences not insurmountable at all? What's going to be the key to the midterms for the conservative movement?
Well, I think, that's a tension that I think can be a healthy tension. My own view is that what ails America is sort of all of the above. I think our economic travails, to some extent, are a symptom of a much deeper problem. When you have a $17 trillion national debt, 40% of which has been run up in the last 5 years, and you have the overhang and the train wreck of Obamacare really threatening to destroy the finest healthcare system in the world today, and then you have $65 trillion in unfunded entitlement liabilities. JD, when you gaze out over something like that, and your economy is starting to look a lot more like the Eurozone than the U.S. economy of the 80s or 90s, or even the early 21st century, I don't think that that's just an economic or fiscal problem. I think it shows a deeper cultural, spiritual, and moral problem. And so I think what we have to do is offer a compelling critique on both cultural and economic issues. But here's the good news. I think the 2014 midterms are going to largely be a referendum on the failed presidency of Barack Obama generally, and specifically on Obamacare. And opposition to Obamacare unites social and economic conservatives on both moral and fiscal grounds.
Yeah, using both to argue the other could be an effective strategy here. Ralph, I know the book focuses on America and restoring American greatness, but I want to talk about another theme of the book that's also happening here in one way, but also more obviously overseas as well, and that's the persecution of Christians. Specifically, we want to talk about a Washington Times story, another issue that was covered recently. Kim Jong-un, the dictator of North Korea, has called for the execution of 33 people who just had some brief contact with a Christian missionary in North Korea, and we still have this issue of Kenneth Bae, the American, who's held there. When you look at this in context of what else is happening around the world, the persecution of Christians, Ralph, when is this ever going to stop, and what can be done from here in the United States to stop this?
Well, I think, I have a chapter titled The War on Christianity, and I talk about the Muslim Brotherhood's terror campaign against Coptic Christians and other believers in Egypt, talk about the imprisonment and the assassination of professing Christians in Pakistan. You look at the virtual liquidation of the Christian community, tragically, in Iraq, since we liberated Iraq from Saddam Hussein, and it's very troubling. But you've got to make that issue a centerpiece of U.S. foreign policy. If the Secretary of State and the President are not jawboning diplomats and heads of state and not making this a priority, it doesn't get the kind of attention that it should. And the problem is, it's difficult for this administration to make hostility against Christians a major foreign policy priority, because they're conducting their own war against Christianity right here at home. And obviously, it doesn't involve violence like it does in the Middle East. But if you look at the HHS mandate, you look at the harassment by the IRS of Christian and pro-life groups, it's a serious problem. And this administration has shown insensitivity and at times hostility towards people of faith in the public square.
Ralph, I don't know if we could borrow a page from the Bush lexicon, soft bigotry, but it seems the secularists within the Obama administration are trying to change the whole notion of freedom of religion to say what you want to preach in your house of worship, and your home are things unique to you, and that's well and good, but don't dare bring it into the marketplace. At least that argument seems to be made to Christians. And then today in the Twin Cities, you have the spectacle of the female chief of police in Minneapolis wearing a hijab for Hijab Day. You have foot baths for the cab drivers at the Minneapolis St. Paul Airport. You have some suburbs in Minnesota apparently ready to embrace or at least tolerate Sharia law. What is going on with tolerance for other faiths, but not for Christianity in the marketplace?
Well, I think, unfortunately, bigotry against evangelical Christians is the last acceptable form of bigotry left in the country, and I think, frankly, even all Orthodox believers, including faithful Catholics, and many times observant Jews. And if you think that's an overstatement, look at Bill Maher's comments this past week about people who believe in the biblical story of Noah, basically calling them stupid. He's previously suggested that Christians suffer from a neurological disorder, that they're basically mentally ill. And with regard to the administration, J.D., I talked about the IRS harassment of Christian and pro-life groups, where they've basically had IRS agents quiz Christians on the content of their prayers. You look at the administration refusing to support the institution of marriage, and the U.S. Attorney General telling state attorneys general that they're not required to defend their state constitutions and their laws in court. And then finally, look at the Hosanna Tabor case. This involved a Lutheran church, I believe it was in Oregon, where they dismissed a minister and a teacher, and the Obama administration went into federal court and argued that a church did not have the right to hire and fire its own ministers.
Well, the list of grievances is very long and very concerning. Ralph, we'd like to stick around if you could. We got to run a commercial break right now. We want to keep this conversation going. Can you stick around with us?
Yes, I can.
All right,
Good.
excellent.
We'll have you back, Ralph. Ralph, the author of the new book, Awakenings. How do we have an awakening amidst all of this growing secularization in our great republic? We'll talk more about that, and you can weigh in on it too.